Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana News Desk. Indiana University's storybook season under Curt Cignetti continues tonight at Notre Dame in the first round of the college football playoffs.
Most of our family goes most weekends anyways to the games, but we'll have cream and crimson on this weekend.
Ahead, we'll go to South Bend to check in with our reporter on the scene, Elise Perry. Joseph Corcoran this week became the first prisoner executed by the state of Indiana in 15 years despite suffering from paranoid schizophrenia.
Joe was so defective that he could not make a logical decision.
The state is already seeking an execution date for another death row prisoner. And we look back at some of the top stories we brought you over the past year. These stories and more right now on Indiana News Desk. Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, IU fans are making their way to South Bend for tonight's first round college football game between Indiana at Notre Dame. But some Hoosier fans live right under the Fighting Irish's nose. Clayton Baumgarth went north Thursday to meet one of those fans.
Hidden in plain sight, an IU football fan works game weekends at the Linebacker, a popular Notre Dame dive bar in South Bend. He's an IU grad from the class of 1986, and he's not the only IU grad in his family.
I have two sons. One did his master's there, and his other one did his undergrad there. My one son is married to an IU grad. My wife's sister and brother-in-law are both IU grads, so a lot of cream and crimson in the family.
Turnock says the Linebacker has already seen its fair share of lighthearted competition this week, with fans from both teams playing their fight songs back-to-back on the bar's jukebox. And he says he isn't safe from the rivalry ribbing.
Oh, I take some grief, but, you know, obviously I support the Irish and as it relates to the contribution to what it does to this bar. I mean, this is a Notre Dame bar. It's been that way for years. And, you know, Notre Dame has a big impact on this community.
Turnock is looking forward to watching the now elevated IU football program continue to play against the storied Notre Dame team.
I think the last time IU played Notre Dame in football, I went to that game. It was, I think it was 1993. And I do believe we're supposed to be playing in the upcoming years now. So it'd be kind of nice to have that rivalry get back on the gridiron as well.
He and his family have plans to attend the game tonight, and they know who they're going to root for.
We got tickets to go to the game. Our whole family's going. Most of our family goes most weekends anyways to the games, but we'll have cream and crimson on this weekend.
For Indiana News Desk, reporting from South Bend, I'm Clayton Baumgarth.
Well, for more on tonight's big game, we're joined by reporter Elise Perry from outside Notre Dame Stadium. Hi, Elise. It's still a few hours until kickoff, but can you give us a sense of the atmosphere there? Are you seeing many IU fans?
Hi, Joe. Yeah. So since it is an in-state game, I'm seeing a decent amount of fans from both IU and Notre Dame. The atmosphere, it's really energetic. You know, this morning I was talking to some IU fans about their excitement for the game, and some Notre Dame fans actually came up and they started doing their Irish chant. And, you know, it was just really fun banter amongst both of the fans.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously it's cold outside. What are they expecting conditions to be like tonight?
Well, this morning it was actually snowing pretty heavy, but it's since stopped. It is freezing, and the temperature is just supposed to be colder, but it's not supposed to start snowing again. But, you know, these are very similar to the conditions where IU beat Purdue 66-0, so I don't think Cignetti's that worried.
I hope it snows 1.5 feet. We have a Canadian quarterback. Did you see him throw the ball against Purdue? I mean, this guy grew up like in the frigid north.
So what's next now for IU if they win or lose tonight?
Well, if IU wins, we're going to be going to New Orleans to play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. But if IU loses, Cignetti has said that he's going to start building the roster for next year.
All right, enjoy the big game. Thanks for all the reporting. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, one of Hoosier football's biggest fans won't be able to watch Friday night's big game. I visited with the Bloomington man who's facing his own battle with lessons learned from a football program that has taken the country by surprise. Todd Reed has quite the Indiana Hoosiers sports collection. His work office at IU Surplus Supply Store has been turned into a museum filled with Hoosier memorabilia, each piece with its own story.
And everybody that comes in here, I tell them about Harold Morrow, and and then he signed my football for me.
Reed is from Goodland in northwest Indiana, which he calls Purdue and Notre Dame country. He got hooked on IU as a kid at the local barber shop.
You could go in there on a Saturday and watch a football game on his little black and white TV in the early 70s and just pick up the conversation and the rivalry. It was just good humor between him and the farmers.
Reed is not only a fan, he works with former IU greats.
I mean, it's come full circle for me. I mean, I pick up my office phone and it's Antoine Randall L. And he's needing help buying some surplus equipment for his Virginia Tech.
Reed was a season ticket holder until a couple of years ago.
I had to quit going because I got diagnosed with leukemia. So going to the games, I couldn't be in the crowd.
Reed is scheduled for surgery today, game day.
And they're going to go to Notre Dame and play, against teams that I grew up against, the fans from Notre Dame and Purdue on Friday night. I mean, I can't tell you what that means.
He'll be in the ICU for a couple of days and will be hoping for a Hoosier victory.
I pray I wake up in ICU and somebody's waving a IU pennant over me and sharing the good news with me.
He says he never thought he'd see the stands full, an 11-1 record, or cancer, but it all taught him to have hope and never give up.
I have the same passion and same fight in me that football team does to beat this, and I'm 100% positive that I will.
And now for some headlines from around the state. Richard Allen, the man convicted of the Delphi murders, will spend the rest of his life in prison after Judge Fran Gall gave him a 130-year sentence today. Allen received the maximum sentence of 65 years for 2 counts of murder in the killings of teenagers Abigail Williams and Liberty German in 2017. The other 2 counts were dropped due to double jeopardy. Sentencing in Carroll County Court lasted just over an hour. Bloomington's Shelley Yoder was elected the leader of the Indiana Senate Democrats on Wednesday. Yoder succeeds Greg Taylor as the minority leader. Taylor has been accused of sexual harassment by multiple women in the past month. He has denied any wrongdoing. Yoder, who previously served on the Monroe County Council, won her Senate race for District 40 in 2020. Indiana lawmakers say they're cautiously optimistic about the state's financial situation ahead of writing a new 2-year state budget. A forecast unveiled Tuesday projects the state will add about $800 million across both years of the new budget. They say Indiana's Medicaid program will likely take up a bigger portion of the state budget, which means hard decisions must be made.
We can't build our budget on the back of the most vulnerable Hoosiers, children and our seniors.
Lawmakers will receive another revenue forecast in April, shortly before they finalize the new budget that takes effect in July. The Kurt Monroe Convention Center loan debt will be fully paid off after the County Council unanimously approved a money transfer Tuesday night. The Convention and Visitors Commission will transfer nearly $425,000 from their general fund to the debt fund to pay off the region's bank loan. It paves the way for a new bond to fund the expansion project.
I really feel like we're on the right track, and this is really one of the things that I really wanted to make sure was on the right track before I retire in just a few days. And this is a very tangible step.
The Capital Improvement Board is in the final design phase of the $52 million expansion project. Construction is scheduled to begin in June. One of the planned tech parks in Ellettsville is not going to happen. Town manager Mike Farmer says the two parties involved, Digital Resources and Umbarger Farms, couldn't come to terms on buying the land near Keehee by the stated deadline. Land for the tech park has been annexed into town limits and rezoned from agricultural to light industrial. But some citizens were concerned about the lack of transparency on project specifics. Bloomington residents will see fewer city buses fully wrapped in advertisements over the next 2 years. The Transit Board of Directors voted Tuesday to cap the number of buses wrapped in ads. The goal is to introduce more electric buses with Bloomington Transit branding.
What we have right now, yes, you can find BT logos on these wrapped buses, but they are colored and shadowed in such a way that they're completely lost.
And under the new policy, no more than half of fixed route buses will be eligible for full wraps over the next 2 years. BT Access electric buses will not have advertising. The Monroe County Fairgrounds has opened its first ever drive-through holiday light show. Reporter Isabella Visperini and videographer Elena Davis took a drive through the more than 1 mile circuit. Has the story.
For Michaela Karen and her family, this was their first time going to a light show like this one.
It's close to home. I've heard, good things about it, and it was a nice day outside, and we also heard Santa was going to be here.
The light show spans 1.1 miles throughout the fairgrounds, with over 150 light displays.
My daughter really liked pointing out all the animals. There was a train with the giraffe and the monkey and stuff like that. So she really liked that one. My son really liked, I think it was kids playing hockey.
At the end of the light show, there's a Santa village with Santa Claus, refreshments, and local art vendors. A 14-year-old girl is one of the vendors, called Car Creations.
I make baby blankets, and I put letters on them, and then I also put letters on big blankets and towels and sweatshirts, and then I've recently gotten into repurposing old quilts.
Naylor started sewing in 3rd grade. She thought the light show would be a good opportunity to expand her customer base.
I only sell on Facebook, so it's just a lot more attention, a lot more money bringing in.
The idea of putting together a light display originated 5 years ago. The fairgrounds partnered with North Pole Productions to ship over the light displays from Florida, New York, and Tennessee.
There's nothing around close by, unless you go to Indy or Louisville, Columbus, to see anything like this, and we thought this would be good for the community.
It took almost 3 weeks to set up and test all the lights. Displays include a nativity scene, a steamboat, drive-through tunnels, 12 Days of Christmas, and more.
We're expecting people to drive slow through it because there's a lot to see. It's on both sides of the road all the way through the display, so it's not like you're looking at one spot the whole way.
Conard signed a 3-year contract to rent the lights, which costs just over $50,000 each year. Funds to support the cost come from local sponsorships and money raised from other events. Over 500 cars came to the fairgrounds during opening weekend. Conard hopes to see more.
I think we'll definitely come back. This is probably going to be a tradition of ours every year.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Isabella Vesperini.
The fairgrounds will be open Friday through Sunday from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. through Sunday, January 5th. The cost is $20 per car and $40 per bus. Coming up next on Indiana News Desk. Indiana carried out its first state execution in 15 years this week, but more could be scheduled in the near future. And we take a look at some of the top stories this past year we've brought you on Indiana News Desk. These stories and more right here on Indiana News Desk.
You have unleashed the best storytelling ever.
Migration is freedom to Black America.
There's much about me that you don't know.
Let's go, baby.
The age of dinosaurs still continues.
You didn't know that, did you?
I think we may have solved our mystery. All of these movements are expressions of hope.
It's better than any movie script I've ever read.
It's an incredible story.
Welcome back to Indiana News Desk. When the early hours Wednesday morning, Indiana executed its first death row prisoners in 15 years. Our George Hale was in Michigan City for the execution of Joseph Corcoran and has the story.
A Catholic group from the Diocese of Gary held a liturgy outside the Indiana State Prison in Michigan City as Corrections Department workers prepared for the execution. It was the first of several prayers by clergy members and opponents of the death penalty that were motivated by the execution of Joseph Corcoran for shooting and killing 4 people inside his home in Fort Wayne in 1997. Lisa Ann Gross brought her Fort Wayne congregation to the prison to pray for Joseph Corcoran as well as those taking part in his execution.
All of the people who have been asked or forced to be part of that have now been traumatized as well. People who work in this prison have been asked to participate in a killing, and we are in prayer for them and concerned for their well-being and how the ripples of violence and the cycles of violence are continuing.
Gross said that people in Fort Wayne can still recall hearing about the decades-old murders that landed Corcoran on death row 2 years later.
It was such a shocking crime and obviously very memorable for 4 people to be killed, and the circumstances of someone living with such severe mental illness and not getting the help they need to live a healthier life. All of that is devastating on so many levels.
Attorneys for Corcoran tried for months to convince state and federal courts to stop the execution on account of Corcoran's mental health. Corcoran suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. They say his mental health issues contributed to his refusal to take the prosecution plea deal that would have spared his life.
He offered Joe the opportunity to spare his own life, and Joe, because of his severe mental illness, couldn't get on board with that. Again, it was so frustrating. It's frustrating now.
Protesters waited outside the prison as the clock ticked toward midnight. Under Indiana law, executions must be carried out before sunrise and the date set. Corcoran's execution began after midnight. That's according to state corrections officials. Indiana is unusual in that it doesn't guarantee space for media to witness executions. News outlets condemned the restrictions in a letter to Governor Holcomb. Sometime after 1 a.m. Central Time, 3 unidentified individuals emerged and walked past a group of reporters and videographers standing in the parking lot. They placed a stack of papers into a clear box attached to a no parking sign. All 3 people had their faces covered, and they didn't take questions. The press release offered little information. The execution began sometime after midnight. Corcoran was pronounced dead at 12:44 a.m. Some protesters said they were motivated by the secrecy surrounding Corcoran's execution.
Part of the fabric of our country is what our government does, which is why we all have to be watching, which is why we have to figure out how to advocate so that public witnesses are part of this process and can report out what is being done.
The Corrections Department said state law prevented it from opening the execution to media observers. The department did, however, allow Corcoran to invite a journalist to take one of 5 seats open to his friends and family.
When the blinds were open for us, his eyes were open. We could see he was blinking. There was brief head movement. He was calm. He did not seem to be stressed in any way.
Casey Smith says it happened fast and that there were no overt signs of struggle.
There was no clear indication that his breathing changed drastically from my point of view. He did not seem to spasm at all. Again, I couldn't see the bottom half of his body.
Corrections officials tell us that Corcoran's body was later sent for autopsy. After the execution, Attorney General Todd Rokita said Corcoran, quote, finally paid his debt to society as justice was provided to his victims. For Indiana News Desk, I'm George Hale.
There are now 7 men remaining on Indiana's death row, including Benjamin Ritchie, who was convicted of killing a Beech Grove police officer in 2002. Rokita has asked the state Supreme Court to set an execution date for him. Well, once in a lifetime eclipse, a police crackdown in Dunn Meadow, a contentious national election, and perhaps the most successful IU football season ever. Those were just a few of the stories we brought you during this past year. Our chief videographer, Devin Ridgway, put together this look back at 2024.
It's time to move past territorial battles and meaningless fights. It's time for productive conversations and reasonable compromises that yield action.
Say no to censorship! Say no to censorship!
We think it's a wonderful university with a lot of potential to do great things, but it's just really failing to live up to its mission right now.
The superintendent has chosen not to listen to the heart of these high schools, which are the teachers and students, and therefore must be removed.
I've worked very closely with nearly every Indiana institution to get this right. This is too important not to.
I think the hard part for us was that this bill assumed that we were already incapable of doing our work.
We had a few thousand people in several various spots spread out and leaving and arriving at different times. So it was great. I thought it was a great event.
Ain't nothing hurts more than watching ground that you've farmed literally all your life, you know, that you put a house up right across from and thought you'd always work it. Now you're working the dregs.
I am cautiously optimistic that this could be something that is good for our community if the merger is done right.
I can't fathom any situation in which peaceful, very clearly nonviolent demonstrators are to be met with shields and police batons.
I didn't really know what they were using to kill him. It really doesn't matter to me. They're trying to find a humane way to commit murder, and there is no such thing.
This was an investment in us. This was an investment in our future. This was an investment in realizing our potential.
This is about creating jobs and workforce and innovation together. It's about economic growth.
The students who are involved in the arts here, they're very scrappy. They make things happen for themselves.
And this is to mark on the very first day of school, to mark our determination that the speech that we cherish won't die on this campus.
It's been a great year, but it's not totally shocking to me. I said early that we were capable of doing this. We have.
When your values don't align, then you are either the one compromising or they're the one compromising constantly. And the city isn't going to compromise.
When I'm looking for something that could potentially join the collection, there's this sort of triumvirate of the artifact itself, the artist, and then a moment in time.
It is us who are holding us back. And I think the way forward is education. We must educate these people so that they can help themselves.
It's always fun to look back at the year in review and remember some of the stories our team covered. And we want to thank you, the viewer, for inviting us into your homes and for watching Indiana News Desk. Tonight is our last show of 2024. We're taking next week off so our staff can spend the holidays with their families. It takes a lot of people to make Indiana News Desk each week, and we want to introduce you to a few of the folks who work behind the scenes to make it happen. The newsroom team works sometimes months in advance on stories you see in the show. That starts with our reporters and videographers traveling to all parts of the state to bring you stories that are timely, relevant, and impactful, as well as covering all the local news that's important to the community. In the newsroom, we have a team of editors to fact-check and polish the copy, videographers that marry video and audio into the stories you see, and producers that turn it into the program you see every Friday. thanks to all of you. And so many people to acknowledge in our control room, to our directors, graphics, teleprompter, lighting, and video operators, thank you. And thanks to our engineers who work magic behind the scenes to keep us on the air. And to our crew working with me here in the studio, the camera operators, floor director, staging folks, thank you. And that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great holiday. We'll see you again in 2025.
Indiana News Desk is made possible in part by Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.